Alright, this is just going to be kind of an update to what I've been doing. Basically, in previous videos, I used a build called the Fortified Brass build, and it's really been pretty good to me. It's done a lot of damage while being tanky at the same time. There's no real secrets or magic tricks to it, but it just worked really well. But this is the build I've been using recently in Imperial City, and I thought I would just go ahead and share this with you guys. And you can pretty much, take this, apply it to your own builds, or if you're a DK, it'll help you even more as well. So just getting into it. Everything is pretty much the same as the Fortified Brass build, except this is a heavy armor version. I've got the Krog's Visage, which is a heavy armor piece. Everything is impenetrable. I've got 2 pieces of medium, and as far as the glyphs, I've got a maximum stamina here, and I've got a multi-enchant here, as well as on the legs. Now you could play around with that. You can go tri-stat enchants on all your pieces if you want, and that actually might help you on this build. But I've really just kind of used a few tri-enchants on a couple of pieces, and it's worked out just fine for me. So starting out, I use a Krog's Visage. This fills the gap on the armor pretty well, and it gives about 1500 physical penetration, along with the 2 Spriggans pieces I have, which are medium pieces. The Spriggans gives you about 3370 in physical penetration as well, and it adds a bunch of stamina and a little bit of weapon damage, and it's a really good set. It hits really hard. I've also got Spriggan's Jewelry, which I have 2 pieces are enchanted with weapon damage, and I've got a gold piece here which I got on special when they had it going over a weekend, and I've got stamina recovery. Now the way I discovered this was I got it out in Cyrodiil, and I didn't really have time to enchant it with weapon damage, so I just went ahead and just used this for a while. And I found the difference to be night and day. Just my ability to regen stamina was so good. I didn't have problems anymore, so I just stuck with it. I carry these pieces around with me just in case that I might need them. I've got weapon damage here. I've got magic recovery, and there's a place for that as well. I won't cover it in this video, but and I've also got stamina recovery here. So I've just kept these with me. I can apply it to different situations. As far as the weapons, I'm running a dual wield right now, and I've also run sword and board as well. But I use the Fortified Brass axe, and I use the infused glyphs on them. Now, as you can see, I almost have about 4,500 in disease damage, and my off piece is a axe of a Night Mother, which I also happen to have from my other set, and that works just fine because you only need 5 pieces to complete your Fortified Brass axe. 4 pieces here, and weapons. So this is what I've used. Now, I've done a couple things different. You can look in my previous champion points video for what I've used, but I'll just go over it really quick here. This has been my preference. Reduce the cost of break free by 23%. This actually seems to help a lot. I know they say that you don't really want to go over 56 points because it's kind of a waste of points and that sort of thing, but it's really more about putting the points where you want them, and for me this seems to work, so I've done that. I've done 56 points into Mooncalf, and I've got 60 points into the Beefal. This is pretty important here. If you can keep this fairly high in your when you hit with the disease damage glyph, you get minor Beefal, which is, I think it's 15-20%, and on top of this you have 46%, so that's quite a bit of healing reduction once you hit an enemy. I've also got 9% into tumbling. I've got 2 into shade. I'm not even sure why I did that. Reduce the cost of block by 9%. This is for when I'm running sword and board. Now, coming over to the apprentice tree, I keep about 7% into blessed, and this complements my other tree, which is quick recovery. So I get 14% there of total recovery, you know, healing given, healing received. If you're healing yourself, there's 14%. Now, I changed things around here a little bit. If you'll notice, my weapon critical isn't terribly high. It's basically 1 out of 4, 25%. So it's pretty terrible. If I was to go ahead and pop a potion, it goes up to 34%, 1 out of 3, but it's still not very good. So basically what I've done is I've come over here and removed some points out of precise strikes. And I do still get a little bit extra damage for precise strikes, but since I don't do it that often, it's not a terribly big issue. And I've taken the points and I've put them into Mighty, which basically gives me 13% instead of versus 12% what I had before. And I've also got points into Master at Arms, which is 22%, and in Physical Weapon Expert, which is basically my heavy attacks. These complement each other, at least from what I've read. I've got another 30% into my heavy attacks. Now, as a DK, when you use the Earth and Heart passive, Molten Armaments, you'll always see me using this, and it does 2 things for me. Basically, it gives me about an extra 5% weapon damage from the Earth and Heart passives, which is right here. As you can see, my weapon damage goes up for 20 seconds. But the main thing is my heavy attacks are increased by 40%, so I add that on top of that. All of a sudden, my heavy attacks are hitting for about 70% more. Add that 5% onto that, and you can see where this is going. My heavy attacks really start to count for something. And since this last patch, the just the regeneration passives and all that, you know, it's really kind of been a hard fight for Magicka and Stamina users just to keep resources. So your heavy attacks will restore resources, and this is one way to do it, and to be able to just, you know, keep on top of the game. Now, as you can see, my without being buffed up, my critical resistance is at 25. My spell resistance is at 27. If I go and I buff up, as you can see, my spell resistance is at 32,000. My physical resistance is at 30,000. Now there's ways to increase that number, but right now I'm pretty happy with it. My critical resistance is at 3134, and this results from everything being impenetrable. I keep this at all times. I want to be able to take as little damage as possible. There's another way to increase your critical resistance, and that is here in resistance. You increase your critical resistance by 1328. Now, I've kept that. I'll just go into this really quick, as I realize some of you guys haven't seen it. My Ironclad reduces your damage from direct attacks by 21%. So I keep 61% here. I believe this covers both physical damage and magic damage. And I also keep points here into Hardy. That adds 10% of both magic and physical onto that, which is about 31%. And of course I've got some in here in quick recovery. So basically that's my setup. I've used infused axes, and these things do a ton of damage. And basically when I do an attack, I will heavy attack into a rending slashes. And this is my setup. I'll go ahead and start with my two-hander bar. Typically I'll put up forward momentum, and that gives me 20% added weapon damage. You want to keep that up at all times. And for the first 10 seconds, this keeps you immune to snares and that sort of thing. So typically, I'll put this up, crit rush into an enemy. This actually does a pretty good bit of damage. And then once I've done that, I'll switch over to my dual wield bar. And of course, I've already had this buffed up. And to any of you DKs out there, your Earth and Heart abilities, once you've got them, they really give you a lot of ultimate back as well. So this is just something to keep in mind when you're doing heavy attacks and you have this active. It's going to really help you out quite a bit. Noxious Breath is another ability I use. Now this will do damage, but what it's also going to do is give your enemies major fracture, which will reduce their physical resistance. Basically what this translates into is about 9% more damage done. So if you've got them affected with this, not only are they taking damage from the skill itself, but you know, any other attack is going to give about an extra 9%. Now, Steel Tornado. This is a pretty good skill to have, and it's pretty handy in Imperial City. But it is kind of weak when your enemies are in full health. Now, when they get down to, oh, say, you know, let's look at the chart here. Okay, Steel Tornado deals up to 100% more damage to enemies based on each percentage of their missing health. Well, if you look here, increases damage with dual wield abilities by 20% against enemies with under 25% health. So as an execute, this is actually pretty good. Using Steel Tornado, you figure, you can, I don't know where you would be at 25%, but I know that from practice, it's quite a bit. So this is a really good execute, actually. It is rather expensive on the stamina side, but if you're towards the end of a fight or whatever and your enemy's just about dead, that's not going to really matter much anyway. If you've been using your heavy attacks, chances are you have some pretty good stamina left in the fight. Now typically what I do, I'll crit rush into an enemy, I'll switch into this, and I'll heavy attack into rending slashes, and that's kind of my spammable ability. This will slow him down, and it'll cause him to bleed. So basically, once you've started this, basically you kind of have them where you want them. You've already fire breathed them, and you're running heavy attacks into rending slashes. Most of the time out here, they can't heal through that, and not only that, you're building ultimate, which you can use at any time. You're building ultimate. Now I've used the Dawnbreaker as smiting, but you can build ultimate from molten armaments and from your heavy attacks into rending slashes, and it works really, really well. So this is just something to consider. Dawnbreaker for smiting, I like it. It's a really good, quick ability. I also like this ability here, Rend. Fully buffed up, it translates into 43,000 damage, but it happens over a period of about 16 seconds, and it also heals you for 53% of the damage done. So this is another consideration. Basically, either one of these works really, really well on your dual wheel bar, but it's just up to you. On any given day, I can be using either this or this. There's not too many people that'll be able to heal their way out of that, except for maybe Templars. Templars can cleanse themselves and get out of that. Now on my two-hander bar, of course I always keep Take Flight there. Buffed up, it seems like it does right around 20,000 damage. Let me check. Okay, it's 18,604, so it's a little bit less with my heavy armor build. And it's not the best, but you'll find it to be really handy at times. Fleeing enemies, that sort of thing, they're not going to be able to get away from you. Forward momentum is something I've used in place of rally. I know a lot of people like the rally heal, and I see why. But forward momentum gets you out of snares, and it keeps you mobile. Volatile armor, this really helps. It gives you added resistances, both magic and stamina, or magic and physical resistance. But also being the fact that it is a draconic power, it also gives you an added 12% healing. So we have that healing on top of the healing we have inside of the champion points, and you have another 28% while this is active, so I like to keep this active whenever possible. I've got Dizzying Swing, and sometimes I use this, sometimes I don't. It just kind of depends on what the enemy's doing and how much trouble I'm having. I've always used Critical Rush. Critical Rush is really good at keeping you mobile, and you'll be able to chase your enemies down, hit them and kill them usually. Reverse slice, I've gone with this morph instead of Executioner just because the surrounding damage is quite a bit, and I've found this to be really handy as far as that goes. So that's what I've used as well. Something else I've used at times is Green Dragon Blood. This is a nice burst heal. You could put that here instead of Noxious Breath. You do a little bit less damage, but if you come against, you know, a group of players or that sort of thing, it's nice to be able to burst heal out of that group. So, you know, this is according to you and your playstyle, but anyway, it's kind of an open slot. You can use either one, but I would say for any Dragonite, definitely keep Molten Armaments. Use them with your heavy attacks. It does a ton of damage, and you'll be happy with the results, and you get a lot of ultimate back from that as well. And Dawnbreaker's grinding is, you know, everybody knows it's a pretty good quick ultimate to have. As far as potions that I use, normally I'm one of these people, I like keeping mobile in Imperial City. It helps me get around, helps me do whatever, so I keep these on hand. The Essence of Speed, I believe they're made with Nemera's Rot, the mushrooms, the Blessed Thistle, and the oh, what is it? The Dragonthorn. I'm not sure. If you ask me in the comments, I'll answer you there. Normally, what I keep here is, this is for Nightblades. I always like to keep some here, and I don't have these on me right now, but these are really good to have as well. If you have a Nightblade that's, you know, tagging you and then running away, this will keep them visible, and if you can see them, chances are you can kill them. It's not hard to do. And this is the other potion I have, and primarily I use this when I know I'm fighting other players. One of the first things, you know, other players will do when you're fighting them is they'll try to immobilize you somehow, and this keeps them from doing that for about 16 seconds, and it also gives you major expedition. The only thing is you have to remember to keep either your rally up or your forward momentum up, because they last 33 seconds and this lasts 46 or 47. So it's just, it's a matter of being able to keep your buffs up. Now, one other thing I wanted to mention, I really like the axes for the damage and that sort of thing, but here's the thing on the infused weapons, is you really have to check to make sure these are charged up with soul gems. These will proc quite a bit, but as they do, you'll lose a lot of its charge. So I kind of make it a practice every time I go back to bank, repair, and all that. I try to go ahead and make sure these are charged up at least once, even if they don't look like, you know, like they're only 3/4 or whatever. I charge them up right away. There's been a few times I've had fights out here where I've had these run out on me, and of course that hasn't been a good thing. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. I've chosen a heavy armor build just because there are some of these monsters out here, bosses, and with players as well, that will one-shot you and you really don't want that. So having this pretty much gives me immunity to being ganked by a Nightblade or something like that. Not that it can't happen, but you know, they're gonna have to really work for it if they want it. So, you know, that's just one of the factors. One of the good things about this build. So anyway, I kind of made this video for friends of mine that I've known. They're using this. Primarily though, for heavy attacks, this is a really good skill to have, and you'll probably want to keep this up at all times. But anyway, I think I've covered everything. If you have questions, just leave them in the comments or whatever. And oh yeah, one more thing. This is what I've used, Dubious Cameron Throne. Now you can use food, but this will really help your stamina recover and that sort of thing. And whenever you're killing something, whether it be a player or an NPC, ideally you want to kill them with the two-handed weapon. And one of the reasons for that is coming down here under the passive follow-up. You're successfully fully charged heavy attacks. Okay, no wait, it's Battle Rush right here. This increases your stamina recovery by 30% for 10 seconds after killing a target. So if your final kill is from a two-handed weapon, that's what you get. Also, while we're here, your fully charged heavy attacks increases the damage of your next attack by 10% for 7 seconds. Now this is why on a DK your heavy attacks will really give you so much, and this is kind of what makes this work. So anyway, I think I've covered everything. That's about all I have to say at this point. But your questions and comments are welcome. So if I can help you guys out in any other way, just let me know. I'm not saying that I'm a real expert here or anything like that, but this is what I've done, and it really seems to work out well. I haven't died that much here in Imperial City, so anyway, I'll talk to you guys later. Y'all take care.